Plasma balls are so fascinating. Is it possible to make a plasma ball at home? And let's make one recycling this huge wine glass container. I live here in Italy, and this is a typical wine bottle in every family. So let's see how to convert one. I don't know if it's possible, but for sure I know in today's video we are going to learn a lot of new stuff about plasma ball, how plasma is so fascinating, why does it form, and all the things you have to know about plasma. So let's get started, but first, intro. Now, to make the electrode inside the plasma lamp, this is a commercial one. We can clearly see that inside this glass bulb there is like a small tower that is made in glass. You can clearly see that it's perfectly precise in the middle of this sphere. This is crucial because you always have to keep in mind that electricity search for the short way possible to reach the other point. You can see that right now it's placed perfectly in the middle, and you can understand that shoot outside these sparks in every direction because it doesn't prefer to choose a shorter way because it's exactly in the middle. For example, if we place this little tower a little bit slightly on the left, probably will shoot beams only on the left, or the most of them on the left. So it's crucial to place it perfectly in the middle. So to make my own tower inside the glass container, this could be pretty tricky because you can imagine that this shape is complicated. It's not a sphere, it's not an egg shape, it's between both of them. So I'm going to use my iPhone that has a LiDAR scanner, scan the shape of this glass container, and then ask ChatGPT to search the exact middle point and give me the measurements, so the coordinates to find the center point where I can place my own electrode and see how to start to modify everything. So let's do this. And it's also very important to choose a material that can stand heat, because remember that every time we are producing plasma, we are also producing heat. In this case, it's a more plasma, but in my case, it has to be a little bit thicker and much more resistant. So in this case, I'm going to choose an electrode, which is the part where all the sparks start from the middle, and I'm going to choose a Pyrex glass, which is the typical glass you can find in chemical test tube or in the lab bulb, also in your kitchen, or the kitchen pan, and the cover is made with special glass. So let's search here in my shop something that can stand the heat from the plasma in the middle. Let's go. And it's incredible because it's just for what I'm really searching for. Is a small tube made in Pyrex so it can resist heat, and is so long that can reach the middle point of this solid. So I think it's perfect also because it fits perfectly inside the hole here on the top. And because I love to recycle, let's think, is it possible to recycle as well all the gas that is inside?
Mostly.
So is it possible to recycle all the gas that is inside this neon tube? I basically have to have the same volume of this 60-liter huge glass wine container. But there's a very bad news. Unfortunately, I just went all over the city searching for these waste tubes, but it's impossible to use the gas that is inside. Even if they are called neon tubes, basically there isn't a proper neon in gas inside. What's inside is so upsetting. Basically, is empty. They are full of vacuum. They have negative pressure, and the neon gas inside is a very small percentage. I'm talking only about 1%. So let me show you. As you can clearly see in this experiment, if you put water inside, you can define how much gas there's inside the neon tube. And it's such a small amount, it's not enough to fill up my
But for sure I can
container.
recycle the neon tubes to make something with this shape.
This is a chemical tube and doesn't fit inside for only 0.5 millimeter, but I can take another glass tube, wear all the safety precaution and start to cut the other end of this tube. Make sure don't breathe this dust,
contains phosphor and also mercury gas. So this is the end result. To remove the white powder that is phosphor, I can use some cotton and just push it with a wood rod, and this is more than enough to clean it up from the inside. Right now I place everything inside the lathe so I can spin it with my hand very slowly, and I can heat up one end. Unfortunately, the torch I'm using isn't made for this purpose, so it's hot enough to melt a little bit and soften the glass, but I'm not reaching the high temperature needed for sealing it. But I can use some pliers once it starts to melt to crush it and to seal it properly.
But even if I fold the glass, I use some pliers to close any gaps. This was airtight, but once it starts to cool down, a little crack happened on the side, and this isn't anymore airtight. So this idea doesn't work. I try again with a smaller neon tube. Maybe the glass was a little bit thicker and I can help you to do this, but I had the same problem. So the solution is just to use no fire at all. Just take a neon tube.
The solution,
and
of course, is epoxy
for
resin.
chemical
This is
testing
a very fluid
and glue
epoxy
the parts
resin. I
together.
put some of it inside this syringe, and I can squish it between the gap there's between the test tube on the top and the neon tube on the bottom. There's this 1 millimeter gap, and I think is perfect for pouring this epoxy. I also added some black tape on the bottom, so makes like a seal, just to keep there the epoxy so it doesn't flow away. But I'm sure that this small gap and the capillarity and the low viscosity of the glue will seal everything perfectly. I let the glue react for 24 hours until it dries. And so this is the end result. Isn't perfect, but makes its job. It's perfectly clear, which is nice. We can see later the tubes and the wire passing inside. And the most important thing is that it's long enough, 40 centimeters, just to reach the middle point.
Okay, the electrode is made. Let's hope it will work. But now let's talk about who invented the plasma? Nobody. Plasma is already in our nature everywhere, but the first time scientists observed plasma was in 1879, and Crookers was like a mad guy like me, has this shop where he was experimenting with glass tube with low pressure gas inside and was shooting beams of electricity inside. So he observed that a very strange phenomenon happened. So the sparks inside this gas was very calm, was very regular spark like this. You can see that it's a very regular one and doesn't make strange noise and also emits light. And depending on which kind of gas you place inside this gas tube, you can also choose the color of the light you can produce. But he didn't really understand what was happening. It took more than 50 years until 1928, and Lavoisier, I don't know why I pronounce it in French, but it was like a German guy, and he was another scientist that dedicated all his life to study this phenomenon, and he really understood all this was happening inside this test tube. And it's not a coincidence that the name plasma came from this Lavoisier scientist, because he realized that plasma transport energy like our blood. The other name of blood, of course, is plasma. In this case, inside my blood there is oxygen and other cells that give energy for my body, and the plasma do the same thing, transport inside ionized gas energy, so it can produce light, heat, and can transport and can also conduct electricity. So this is another phenomenon.
But plasma has a big enemy, which is the pressure. Right now we are here at the 4th floor. You can imagine that I live here with the pressure, ambient pressure of air. Just imagine that I am surrounded by air bubbles that are squished very hard because they are squished by the weight of the air above me. You can imagine that the cloud, the sky, all the air column, the vertical column above me, squish the air around me. This is negative for plasma because plasma has to travel in low pressure. This was an experiment. I was making a kitchen format for my Italian YouTube channel. I was cooking some shrimps, and you can clearly see that we can create plasma, but it's very short, and also the lifetime is very short, couple seconds and only 10 centimeters long. The problem is just the pressure around me. So to have a longer plasma with longer life, the solution is just to reduce the pressure of the air bubbles around me. So I can reduce the pressure, maybe just taking away the clouds or removing the vertical air column above me. And in this case, we have much thinner air. You can see that now the bubbles are more far away, which means that now plasma can travel much further away. You can make a mental experiment, which is so funny to make. Just imagine that I am a molecule of plasma. I can transport, of course, electrons, and I have to run on the other part of this room. In this case, you can imagine that I'm having in my hands electrons, and if I try to run very fast on the other side of this room, if this room is very crowded, let's imagine there are like 40 people behind me, of course I can try to reach the other part, but I will end up without energy, I will waste the electrons that I'm carrying with my hands, I will stop very soon. But something weird happened if you imagine that on the other side or behind me, there are only 3 people. So I can start to run, I have my electrons in my hand, and of course, without problems, I can reach the other part of the room without problems. This is the same thing that happens to atoms inside this crystal glass ball. So they can try to run on the other side of the globe, and thanks to the low pressure, they can reach the other part without problems. So we have, like, imagine an empty room and with low pressure. That's great for plasma. And now finally is the moment to install the electrode perfectly in the middle of the huge wine container. And to do this, I just cut with foam these circles. This isn't airtight, it's just to keep there perfectly aligned all the parts. And the first thing to do is just install the electrode. As you can see, is a pressure fit. It stays there, are marked with a marker with a blue one. The exact position where I have to stop to push it inside. This aligns perfectly the center with the bottle. Now I can take some epoxy resin and I'm ready to seal everything from the top. Remember also to install a small rubber tube. This is important because it's the tube where I can start to pour inside the neon gas and all the other procedures. So I'm a bit scared because epoxy resin can react badly with foam and probably it will burn and create a lot of holes. So here I'm applying some vinyl glue. This is just to create a small layer that keep the right distance between the epoxy resin and the very delicate foam that is underneath. So it doesn't burn, doesn't create holes. I just have to wait 24 hours that everything goes okay and the resin can cure perfectly.
Okay, now let's hope that the glue dries. I know for sure that epoxy can seal the container, so let the glue dry. And now let's talk about the next step, which is inserting gas inside. This could be pretty tricky because I don't really know how to do it. Probably there's a valve on Amazon that can solve this. But let's first talk about the gas they use inside the plasma. They are called noble gas. In this case, the most famous one are helium, argon, xenon, krypton, and many others that basically they have something very, very funny in common. They don't react at all with electricity. They are so stable, and that's the reason why you can see a spark shooting from the inside. It is so stable. It doesn't really move or react randomly because the atoms of these gases are noble, which for me, let's take these words very simply. I'm just talking like to a kid. So let's imagine that I am an atom of this noble gas. I am noble, so I'm rich. I have in my hands all the electrons that I really need. I don't need to lose them or to share them or to trade them with somebody else. Even if you take a taser and you apply a taser to my ass, I start to run, so I'm going to move very rapidly inside the container, but I have all the electrons I need to live. So I don't share them, I don't lose them. I run on the other part of the room and I ended up on the other side with all the electrons I need to live. Instead, if we will fill the container, the glass container, with not noble gas, like propane, methane, or like hydrogen, for example, this could be very dangerous because, for example, hydrogen with plasma can explode. Other gas can react badly and change state. You can change the property of the gas or release like waste material inside the glass container. So this is a terrible idea to use them. Let's imagine them like a very poor atom that has only 3 electrons. You can apply a taser to them. Of course, I will start to run, but I'm so poor, I'm so hungry that I will start to steal electrons from other people around me. I will start to take and throw away the atoms I don't like to carry with me, the electrons I don't like to carry with me. And the most important thing is that probably I will say, Allah, boom, and I will explode because I'm an atom of hydrogen. So this could be also very dangerous to handle it. So let's know this, and now let's find a way to insert this noble gas inside the glass container. I found on Amazon this $8 valve, which is a 3-way valve, and I hope it can work. So let's move upstairs. So this is a very cheap 3-way valve, but works great also for this experiment. So the idea is to create vacuum inside the glass container. I can recycle this AC unit compressor to do this and close the valve once we create vacuum and then open the gas inside the container. To connect the parts, I just install a rubber gasket and I also install a vacuum meter so I can check visually how much vacuum I'm creating inside the glass container. But do you remember before, when we start to seal the glass container and let the epoxy cure for 24 hours, a huge mess happened in these hours. So everything was working perfectly, but I was distracted and I didn't saw the epoxy resin was flowing into the foam that was closing here the gap on the top. I don't know why, probably the foam is a little bit porous and the epoxy can flow inside. Maybe that's the reason why. And I ended up to have so much resin that flows all inside the glass container, and you can clearly see that we have all these strains of epoxy all around the container. But overall, even if I place it this way, okay, it's a little bit ugly, but it's still transparent and I can still see all the sparks and all the electricity flowing inside this glass container. So overall, this could work, but this terrible thing happens for a reason, lucky for me. I just realized that for sure I can turn on the plasma, even if it's a little bit dirty, the glass bulb. It's still transparent, so I can clearly see all the sparks shooting inside the light, the light bulb when it's finished. But if you think about something terrible could happen. Let's think about this container. This is perfectly clean. There are gas and low pressure inside. There aren't contaminants. There aren't like bad particles inside. It's perfectly clean. Let's imagine, for example, if a mosquito flies inside the glass container. What will happen? It will die very soon, for sure, but the plasma bulb will start to kill the mosquito. It will start to cook it and to burn it, and the mosquito will start to produce smoke, and this smoke and also water vapor can contaminate the production of the cleanness of the air inside the container. So it's crucial to have everything perfectly clean, no resin, because also the epoxy resin has like organic material that can react badly with plasma. So we need absolutely to clean perfectly the container. Lucky for me, I just took another wine container. This is also a 50-liter glass container. It's a recycle, so also this one kept like 50 liters of red wine inside for 3 years. So I need to clean very carefully the inside from any residue of anything. So unfortunately, my hands doesn't fit inside. I have to search and find something else that can fit to clean very carefully the inside. So let's move upstairs. And I also think about that also the cap has to be in another material, because if I make a cap another time with epoxy resin, can react with ionized gas inside the container and can release bad chemical molecules. So we need to find something else. Probably in the industry will close the glass wine container using just an extreme heat. They will blow like an oxy torch here on the top and shrink the top, so they close it like this. I don't have such a powerful flame, unfortunately. In industry, they also use gasket, like a rubber gasket here on top, and seal it this way. But if you think about also the rubber gasket is made with organic material and can react badly with plasma. There are special rubbers, but could be expensive. I don't have one. So you can also use ceramic, but ceramic has to be cooked at a very high temperature. I don't have it. So there's another very simple solution I can find in a local shop, and is a white powder. Let's move upstairs and talk about it.
After trying many solutions, the best one is for sure using acid. In this case, sulfuric acid works okay, it's very corrosive and can remove any dust or residue inside this wine container. So remember to clean it with distilled water, and now I have to find something that doesn't react with ionized gas and can close properly this glass container. The cheapest way is using this kaolin powder. Before I made my gasket with foam, and in this case I make it with plywood. After cutting precisely, all the parts fits perfectly. Also with the huge long glass electrode, I can fit it inside here. I also mount the wine bottle upside down, so gravity will work for me. My idea is to mix the beauty mask inside this container, apply a little bit more water than what is recommended, so I have a much more fluid liquid, and I can suck it with a huge syringe. In this case, I can squish the syringe inside the bottle, and the gravity will make the job for me. So it will depositate and align properly everything. Now I have to just let all the water and also the moisture evaporate so that I have a perfect container closed.
The plasma ball is taking shape. Later we will also find a way to attach it to a high voltage source. But now let's think about something that could be very dangerous. Something that I'm going to go in the church and pray that everything goes well, because if you think about, this is a container with a very thin material of glass outside, but is standing such a high negative pressure that wants to collapse the glass from the inside. Let me think about dinosaur. Let's think about egg of dinosaurs. Have you ever thought how big was the biggest egg of any kind of dinosaur? Probably you are thinking about an egg coming out from a dinosaur that was big like a house, and you think about an egg big like a minivan, but isn't really like this. The biggest egg of any kind of huge dinosaur was like this big, like 40 centimeters long. Wasn't properly, most of them weren't spherical, but was more like more long, like a neon tube, more longer than rounder. And the reason is very simple. Let's think about a chicken egg. It's a small egg. Inside there is a baby chicken that is burning. It's not burning, it's just burning. He wants to come out of the egg. To live inside the egg for the time he's staying inside the shell, of course, you have to also have oxygen. The reason why it has an umbilical cord is exchanging the air from the inside of the egg with oxygen outside. So the egg shell, even if you don't see it, has a lot of many small holes that guarantee to have an exchange with the air around him. The same thing is crucial also for dinosaurs. So even if a dinosaur is very huge, it has to make eggs with a very thin shell to guarantee the little dinosaur to breathe and to exchange oxygen with the outside world. So if a dinosaur will make an egg bigger than a car, when it falls down on the ground, is much heavier, so it will crash. He needs to have a thicker shell to survive the fall, and this thicker shell for sure will keep away the oxygen, and the little baby inside will die without the oxygen. So it has to have the perfect balance between between the shape of the egg, the dimension and the weight and the thickness of the shell. That's the reason why ostrich and also whales makes eggs that are pretty small and aren't so big. This is important to notice because here the shell was proportionate to the shape and the pressure of this light. Probably is 1 millimeter thick glass, and in our glass container of wine is only 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters in some parts. So let's hope that this surface is more than enough to contrast the low pressure and the vacuum I'm going to form in the inside, and it doesn't implode. This could be a very loud noise, so and also very dangerous. So I'm going to turn on the compressor, the vacuum pump and everything, and run away and watch it wirelessly in the screen. Let's go upstairs. I just written a checklist to make this procedure as safer as possible. So the first thing is wear safety gear. So I connect the rubber gasket, I turn on the vacuum pump, and now the best thing to be safe is just to run away in another room. I connected Wi-Fi this camera to my smartphone so I can check in real time this view, and unfortunately it took only 30 seconds and this glass container imploded immediately. I was expecting this, and this is due to the fact that this is a very old glass container. It's made by hand. Somebody blew this glass container, and you can clearly see that the thickness is not regular. There are parts that are very thick and other parts that are much thinner, and that's the critical part where it implode. Now I want to replicate this experiment but using a very long glass tube. I think it could be great to see a huge spark of plasma traveling 2 meters long. To create a hole, the best solution is to use a very hot flame, soften the glass, and the vacuum inside the neon tube will suck the glass and create by itself a round, perfect hole inside. This is so handy because I have to now remove all the white dust that is phosphor from the inside of this neon tube. The solution is to use some stainless steel balls. These are pretty heavy and can scratch very gently the glass from the inside. So I just have to remove this powder that is very thin. I don't want to breathe it, so I close the hole and I shake the tube for about 10 minutes. And you can see that it's working. Wow, and the tube now is perfect. I have to now remove the dust from the inside, so I have here a small plate, and I want to collect this white powder. So let's be careful right now. I'm going to save this precious powder for a future experiment. The idea is to compress it very tightly and shine a very bright LED laser on top. This phenomenon physics will create such a bright powder. I'm going to show you later. I seal the hole and this new glass tube with kaolin powder. This doesn't react with ionized gas, so it's just a protective layer, but I seal perfectly everything pouring epoxy resin. This time without making the huge mess of before, making sure that it doesn't leak in the inside or everywhere. Another solution could be to use silicone now that we install kaolin powder. I install as well an argon gas tank. I also install a vacuum meter so I can check the vacuum, and to create the vacuum I can recycle this fridge compressor, and for the high voltage I'm going to use this neon sign transformer. I open the valve and turn on the vacuum pump. You can see it's perfectly working. After wearing protective glasses, I check if the air from the inside of this big tube goes away. Now that I'm sure that we have negative pressure, I can insert the argon gas. I turn on the vacuum pump, and now inserting the gas is a bit tricky. I don't really have a meter, I'm just guessing how much argon I'm installing inside the tube. I can turn on the high voltage transformer, and now nothing happens, but I can move with my hand very carefully this high voltage cable. I am using a PVC pipe. Don't replicate these parts at home, just take this as a video, as an experiment, and you can clearly see that it's working. We are forming plasma in the inside of this tube, a 40 centimeters long plasma, which is understandable considering the power of this transformer. and you can see that it's working. Unfortunately, that camera doesn't really catch how bright this plasma is. You can see that we are melting the silicone and the epoxy that is outside, but overall the plasma is still visible in the inside, so this is so promising. I'm so happy. And consider that this is completely homemade from scrap pieces. This was a compressor from an old fridge. This was a transformer from a cafe. And I also insert some argon gas completely casually. So I just turned the valve for a couple seconds and it's working. So I guess I found the right proportion between low pressure and argon. Isn't perfect. I was expecting to have a 2-meter long spark, but overall the most important thing is that we learn new stuff today. This was just an excuse. This was an experiment to learn new things about the story of plasma and all the problems we can encounter to create our plasma at home. One thing for sure I'm going to build in the future is a very much more powerful flame so that I can model and bend and also seal perfectly these neon tubes that are great. This is a great experiment. I also found and had an idea about this heating element to heat cafe and restaurant. Has this huge Pyrex glass that is also very cheap, and I think it could be a great idea to convert this huge glass tube into a much bigger neon tube now that I know for sure what I have to improve. So I need for sure a meter so that I can check how much argon I'm putting inside. I have to have a much hotter flame to seal the glass container, but I think it can work. So, and at this point I leave you my 2 previous videos here, check them out as well, and see you soon with another do-it-yourself tutorial. Ciao ciao!